But here's what we're going to talk about for just a minute, is that the Powell family needed to get legal representation for Jimmy. And Jimmy was the black sheep of the family. He was, a little nuts, but his mother loved him very, very much. And so she found a lawyer, but he was very expensive. And Tommy was a marijuana smuggler and distributor, going in and out of Colombia. He had the financial resources to hire a high-powered lawyer. And while Tommy really didn't want anything to do with his brother, who he had never gotten along with, he was kind of forced by his family to use his financial resources to help his brother. So there was a meeting with Tommy and Tommy's three other brothers and his mother, Arnold Levine, and maybe another lawyer. And no defense strategy was proposed at the time, but a price was given, and that was $120,000. Today, it's approaching $1 million for Arnold Levine to just take the case. Tommy agreed to do it, and so let's hear why.
So I got a call, and then I got to go see my mother. And my mother says, "You're going to take care of this?" And I says, "No, I don't really want to do this. That's not, I don't want to, support this concept." Then they called a family meeting in the Careless Navigator across from our hotel, the Arvilla in Treasure Island, Halva Barkey's place. And they brought in Arnold Levine, and I'm there with my three older brothers and my mother discussing, him doing the representation for Jimmy. We're sitting at the table, like two lawyers and the family and everything. And he says he'll take the case. And he wants $120,000. And I'm going, oh boy. So after that, all the brothers and my mother said, I got to do it. I flew the money down to Arnold Levine, all in 20s, because I didn't want to give him hundreds, in a suitcase, and brought it to his office in Tampa. And I had left my briefcase in the office, and so I just turned around and go get my briefcase and went back in the door, and there he is on the floor, counting his $120,000.
Levine was aware of Tommy's profession and how he came across the money to be able to give him $120,000. And what's interesting is that a lot of this that I looked at when I went back into the research, I have to view things through a lens of 1972, right? In 1972, it actually wasn't. It was unethical, but it wasn't unlawful. So anyway, so Levine took the case. Stitt also had a lawyer. Now, what's really interesting with this is that Stitt already had the lawyer. That he had a guy named Jim Eckert and his stepfather, Lenny Andrews. Stitt had already been in some trouble. Stitt had just before the Karen Jolley shooting been picked up for a marijuana charge. And the reason that this is important is because there was already work behind the scenes by Eckert and Andrews before anything happened at Casa Marina to help Stitt escape any sort of justice or mar to his record. So while this was only a misdemeanor marijuana charge, Lynn Andrews went to the prosecutor and said, "Oh, look, please, let's make a deal because, Jeff's going to go to college." And so the reason that I bring this up is because Stitt was already in trouble. He already had a lawyer, and he already had his stepfather, Lynn Andrews, pulling strings for him. what happened is after the Karen Jolley killing, that's when his marijuana charge actually went to trial, because Russell did charge him because he didn't stay clean. The judge in Stitt's marijuana charge said, well, you've already suffered a great emotional shock from what happened to Casa Marina, so we're just going to give you 5 years of probation. That was it. He didn't go to jail, he didn't serve any time, didn't face any sort of penalty. He got 5 years of probation, which is basically a slap on the wrist. So here we go. And this is the crux of it, all right? It was an unintended consequence of political string pulling to get Stitt off that we'll see actually led to Powell being able to get an insanity plea. So let's talk about this. So as we said just a little while ago, Stitt was taken to the police station. He picked up the cocaine. He put it in his pocket. They're like, okay, buddy, you're under arrest. So they're going to question Stitt down at the police station. This is right after the shooting happened. Guess who shows up? Lenny Andrews. He's actually there at the police station while his stepson is being questioned. He's standing right outside the door, so he's hearing it all, right? They know that they need to get Stitt off because his statement is incriminating. So right before the trial for Jimmy Powell starts, they have a pre-trial hearing. The trial, I think, was like around April 7th or 9th or something like that. It was the following week. But they have a pre-trial hearing with the judge. This is for Stitt. The whole goal of the pre-trial hearing was to get the statement that Stitt had given at the police station erased from, make it inadmissible at the trial as evidence. So they don't want to play Stitt's statement. They don't want him to see the transcript. They don't want anybody to be able to use Stitt's statement in court. And they did it. And the way that they did it is that Lenny Andrews said to the judge at this pretrial hearing, he said, look, I heard it from right outside the door, and it was loud, and it was vicious. And they were yelling at Jeff. So it creates a coercion pretext for the judge to say, well, this testimony was coerced. So there's doubt. And then the captain that had apparently conducted the interview admitted, he's at the pretrial hearing too, he admitted, well, for whatever reason, we had turned off the tape 5 or 10 minutes before the interview ended. Like, are you kidding me? Why would they have done that? So what that did, it was suggesting even further still, causing Jeff to make a statement that, wasn't true or that fit a certain narrative. And then finally, here's the transcriber. The lady who took the audio tape of that interview with the missing 5 to 10 minutes, she transcribes it, and she says, you know what? After I transcribed it, I just went ahead and deleted the audio off the tape. So the audio no longer existed. All that was there was what she typed. And they couldn't compare that transcription to the real audio because it had been destroyed. And it's crazy. And so what happened? They eliminated Stitt's statement from the trial. It was not admissible at court. And you see, the problem is, and what we'll see here in just a minute, is that you have to, well, we'll get to it, but what happened is when you took away Stitt's statement, he was the only one that witnessed what happened in the apartment that had been apprehended, other than Jimmy Powell, right? The motive that Jimmy Powell had to shoot Karen was eliminated. Okay? So let's hear from Mike again real quick.
But I always liked Stitt. He was really just always smiling, always a good personality. But he felt so guilty that he really wanted to tell me what happened from his side, and And he felt guilty because they tried to steal that coke, and it led to her death, and he felt responsible for that.
I don't know that Arnold Levine had any idea that he was going to try to declare insanity until the case approached trial, right? And we'll see why in just a second. But let's talk about what happened in the trial, and let's frame it in 1972 terms. In 1972 Florida, the laws were much different. If somebody said that they were not guilty by reason of insanity, it turned it around on the state. And the state had to then prove that the person was sane. Okay? Today, it is the exact opposite, where the person has to prove that they were insane. Okay, so laws have been completely changed. But in 1972 terms, somebody declares that they were insane and did something, it's up to the state to prove that. And so Levine argued that Powell had been on 5-10-day cocaine high, unable to distinguish from right and wrong. And, of course, they trot out their experts. And I have some of the quotes here from the trial from those medical experts, couldn't distinguish right from wrong and suffers from a persecution complex and subject to rages, and especially when on drugs, he's crazy. And so you get this expert testimony, right? And Stitt's original statement had been suppressed, as we talked about ad nauseum a minute ago. On the stand, Stitt said the exact opposite. He said that Powell had a Jekyll and Hyde. They didn't admit that. I mean, they said, yeah, we were in the apartment, we were buying coke, we were doing this and that, but that all of a sudden he had this Jekyll and Hyde transformation, and he went nuts for no apparent reason. We don't know why he went crazy. It just must have been the drugs, and he just went and got a gun and started shooting everybody and accusing everybody of stealing cocaine, and nobody stole cocaine, and and the suppression of Stitt's statement was devastating because, and this is what we talked about, when his statement got taken away from evidence, it took away the motive. And so part of proving that, and the major part of proving that he was sane when he perpetrated this crime, was motive. And now the motive was gone. So let's hear again from Dave. And this is something that I really want to clarify. When you got there, you said that he told you to back off, or that he was going to kill her. Are you positive that he said her?
Yeah. He didn't use her name, he just referred to her as her. And he said that he was going to kill her if I didn't leave. And I said, okay. I kept asking 2 or 3 times to drop the gun. He said, no, he was going to kill her if I didn't leave. So I said, okay, I'm going to leave. I'm backing up right now.
When it came to the legal case and how he got off, part of the argument was that he was insane and didn't realize that it was Karen that he was holding, but rather he thought that he didn't know who it was, or that it was Jeff Stitt, her boyfriend. If what you say is that he said the word her, it indicates that he wasn't as insane as they argued in court.
Yeah, when I heard that he had copped the plea to temporary insanity, I said, that sounds impossible. It just blew us away.
The outcome of the trial, the jury had 5 potential choices. Not guilty at all, which meant that he would have walked free. Not guilty due to insanity, or 3 levels of murder charge. They only have to prove it beyond the shadow of a doubt that he was insane, right? And the prosecution wasn't able to mount a successful prosecution because they didn't have a motive that they could bring up in court. Everybody knew that Stitt had stole those drugs, but they couldn't mention it in court. There was no motive. It was gone. So anyway, the jury really didn't have that much of a choice. There was a legal rule, and it wasn't exactly a legal framework. It was a rule that was given to judges just before Powell's case went to trial. And it allowed a judge who was over one of these cases, if somebody was released because they were insane, if they were considered to be manifestly dangerous, the judge was allowed to commit them to mental institution. And that law, or it wasn't a law, but the rule also said that it was the judge who was the sole person able to rescind that order or to release them.